The Galactic Council's war room buzzed with tension as Admiral Zextara finished his briefing. The holographic display showed the devastating aftermath of the Third Rim War. Entire star systems reduced to debris fields. Billions of casualties across a dozen species, and the complete annihilation of the Korthik Empire's military might. As you can see, the tall crystalline being continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. The human's approach to warfare is primitive, brutal, inefficient. He gestured toward the data streams flowing across the display. They suffered a 67% casualty rate in the opening engagement alone. No civilized species fights with such reckless abandon. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled alien dignitaries. The Veltari representatives? Tentacles writhed in distaste. The Synthetic Collective's ambassador processed the data with visible disapproval, their optical sensors flickering red. General Sarah Chun sat quietly in the corner, her weathered hands folded over the table. The human delegation's military advisor had been invited as a courtesy, a token gesture to include Earth in the post-war analysis. Most of the council still viewed humanity as newcomers to galactic civilization, barely a century removed from their first contact. Admiral Zextar's crystalline features shifted into what might have been satisfaction. The human approach lacks the sophisticated orbital bombardment strategies of the Korthik, the quantum entanglement warfare mastered by the hegemony, or the biomechanical sworn tactics that served the hive world so effectively. He paused, savoring his next words. Perhaps it's time to question whether humanity belongs among the galaxy's military powers at all. The room fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and optical array turned toward General Chun. She remained motionless for a long moment, her gray eyes studying the holographic casualty reports with an expression that was impossible to read. Finally, she spoke, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade through silk. Should I sit this one out, or speak from experience? Admiral Zextar's crystalline form pulsed with indignation. Experience? Human, your species has been part of galactic civilization for barely 87 years, Chien interrupted, rising to her feet. Her movements were deliberate, economical, the bearing of someone who had spent decades making life-and-death decisions. We've been spacefaring for 87 years. We've been at war for 8,000. She stepped toward the holographic display, her fingers dancing over the control interface. The images shifted, showing Earth's scarred surface, its cities, rebuilt a dozen times over. You call our casualty rate inefficient, she continued, her voice gaining strength. 67% losses in the opening engagement. You know what we call that? She turned to face the assembled aliens. Tuesday. The Veltari ambassador's tentacles recoiled. Surely you exaggerate. Stalingrad 1942, Chun said. The display shifting to show ancient battle footage. 90% casualties. We held the line. Normandy, 1944. First wave took 80% losses. We kept coming. The images changed. Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, the resource wars, the climate conflicts. For 8 millennia, we've been killing each other and learning from every death. Admiral Zextar's crystalline body darkened. Primitive barbarism is why we won. Chun's voice was steel now. You want to know why the Korthik Empire fell? Because they fought like you, calculated, efficient, logical. They used optimal fleet formations, maintained proper supply lines, and followed established tactical doctrine. She smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. They never expected us to ram cargo ships into their dreadnoughts. They never anticipated us strapping fusion reactors to asteroids and using them as kinetic weapons. They couldn't comprehend soldiers who would detonate themselves to take out a single enemy position. The room was deadly quiet now. Even the Synthetic Collective's processing hums had ceased. You see inefficiency, Chien continued, walking around. The table. We see adaptation. Your sophisticated orbital bombardment strategies? We learned to fight in the rubble. Your quantum entanglement warfare? We developed quantum isolation protocols by studying our own mistakes. Your biomechanical swarm tactics? Child's play compared to fighting Zerg rushes in virtual reality games. She stopped in front of Admiral Zextara. You fight to minimize losses. We fight to win. That's the difference. But the cost, the Veltari ambassador protested, is what we've always been willing to pay, Chun replied. Every human soldier who dies fighting your wars does so carrying the lessons of Thermopylae, of Gettysburg, of Tujima, of 100,000 battlefields where we learn that sometimes victory requires sacrifice. She returned to the holographic display, calling up tactical analyzers that made several aliens visibly uncomfortable. You want to know why humanity belongs among the galaxy's military powers? Because while you've been perfecting the art of civilized warfare, we've been mastering the science of survival. When the Korthic deployed their planet killers, you calculated acceptable losses and strategic withdrawals. We calculated how to turn their weapons against them. Admiral Zextar's crystalline form was now almost black with agitation. Your methods are effective, Chun finished, which is why the Third Rim War lasted 6 months instead of 6 years, which is why the Korthic Empire is now the Korthic Memorial Nebula, and which is why you're all sitting here analyzing our primitive tactics instead of speaking Korthic. She gathered her data tablets and turned toward the door. You want to question whether humanity belongs among the galaxy's military powers? Go ahead. But remember this, every species in this room has lost at least one war in their history. We've never lost one that mattered. As the door sealed behind General Chun, the war room remained silent. Finally, the Synthetic Collective's ambassador spoke, its voice unusually subdued. Perhaps, it said, we should be taking notes instead of giving lectures. Admiral Zextara said nothing at all.